Hi, we're having a conversation with Mark Klugmann, who is founder of Leap Cities. And he has also advised presidents in the White House and in Latin America. And Dr. Klugmann, what are Leap Cities?
Well, Leap Cities is a model for accelerating development, for creating institutions that work better and creating them more quickly, of leapfrogging the process of economic development, and essentially becoming places that are very effective in attracting investment and creating jobs. The phrase Leap City is formed by legal, economic, administrative, in the sense of public administration, and political. It's a legal, economic, administrative, political jurisdiction. I think one thing that happens that frustrates the attempts to really accelerate economic development is we call it economic development. We don't say what we're concerned about is legal, economic, administrative, political development, because it's too long to say. The problem that happens then is instead of talking about creating zones that really provide the incentives and the institutions that we know work. We know that they work because we know Hong Kong works, we know Singapore works. Instead, we talk about, free trade zones, tax-free zones. The reality is there are lots of places in the world that you can invest at zero tax, and the irony is a very small percentage of the world's investment goes to places which are zero tax. The largest share of world investment goes to places that have legal institutions that are well established and are transparent. It goes to places with good public administration that's transparent and efficient, and it goes to places that have political stability and that have attractive economic policies. The model, therefore, is about integrating these elements, the legal, economic, administrative, and political framework. And a critical component is the outsourcing of the administration of justice, because that's really the big problem, that's really the big challenge in development. Outsourcing the administration of justice to credible, external, independent sources. And in that way, instead of saying we're going to have to wait a few centuries to have our judicial structures evolve, you simply fast forward and identify those institutions which are most effective and most credible, and you outsource and make use of their experience and their structure.
And what are the main objections that you have found when you talk about Leap Cities?
Yeah, I first proposed this in Honduras and in El Salvador about 10 years ago. And the objection was to this outsourcing of the administration of justice, saying we have a national judiciary, and there's nothing wrong with our national judiciary. How can you say they should not have jurisdiction? This was the same objection I heard, by the way, a couple of weeks ago in the month of April of 2012, when I was presenting this to the Economic Cabinet in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. They said, if you were to create in a city a special legal jurisdiction, wouldn't that suggest there's something wrong with our legal system? However, both of those concerns are resolved. It got resolved in Central America when CAFTA was approved. Because what CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, said, and this was ratified in Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala and so forth, was that there was a jurisdiction superior to the national judiciary, which is an instance of international arbitration. So a U.S. firm that invests in Central America under CAFTA, if they're in a disagreement with the government, the final word is not with the national judicial system. The final word is a system of arbitration at the World Bank in a venue called ICSID, a Center for Dispute Resolution. In fact, the really big companies have always found a way to escape the national legal jurisdiction. When they come in and build a hydroelectric project, it will say in their contract with the foreign government, this contract shall be interpreted under the laws of New York, or it says it will be arbitrated in Paris at the International Chamber of Commerce. For the really big players, that's always been available. It hasn't been available for everybody else. In Georgia, they've done a lot to reform their judicial system. So they said, won't this suggest there's something wrong with our judicial system? I said, not at all. It simply is a way of saying to a foreign investor, you can come and do business here the way you're accustomed to. You don't need to learn the language in order to interpret our legal code. You don't need to train your internal legal team in a system of law you're not acquainted with. And for the same reason in the hotel, there are electric plugs that are the plugs you're used to and the current you're used to, so you can use your same electric shaver. It's a way of saying to investors, you're really very well invited and welcome here. And they understood that that's an attractive thing. And in the case of Central America, because of this critical change that CAFTA represented, it resolved that concern about, can we really create this separate legal instance? And when it's referring to areas that are less than 1% of the national territory, it's not that big a deal. And when it's being done in areas where right now there's no population and there's no activity, economically speaking, it's really not that big a deal. And in fact, Honduras, under the leadership of President Porfirio Lobo and the president of the legislature, Juan Orlando Hernandez, took this historic action last year of reforming the Constitution and passing a special legislation to permit special development regions. And these special development regions, in fact, contemplate the option of an outsourcing of the administration of justice in addition to a special economic, administrative, and political regime. So that is an innovation that Honduras has really taken the lead in. And there are people like Octavio Sanchez leading that project, and Ebal Diaz, who played a very important role in the legislative process, who are doing work which I think the whole world should be watching closely.
If leap cities become a reality, what will be the main short-term challenges?
Paradoxically, once they come into being, the real challenge may be a flood of population that wants what exists there, because these by design are extremely attractive places. They're designed to provide the things that people fundamentally want. What do people fundamentally want? They want access to justice. They want a transparent and efficient public administration. They want an economic framework that encourages investment and creates employment. They want stability and security. So the possibility is that there will be very large numbers of people, of population, who will want to arrive before the level of expansion and development can accommodate them. In fact, this is sort of what would have happened in mainland China when Deng Xiaoping created the special economic zones. There were 4 of them. The most well-known was Shenzhen, and contiguous with Hong Kong. And there, because it was an authoritarian government, it actually put restrictions on the flow of population. But in fact, it grew from a population of having, something over 100,000 people to something over 10 million people. Essentially 10 million people moved there, and a lot more would have, but instead they just kept creating more and more special economic zones. So the way to manage the success of a leap city or of what they did in China is by making more areas available for that. But you do that as the demand appears.
You mentioned design. By design, these are very attractive areas.
Yes.
But Friedrich Hayek warns us against constructivism and design societies. What is the relationship between?
I never saw a complaint by Friedrich Hayek about the 1789 U.S. Constitution. I never saw him objecting to the Bill of Rights. I never saw, in other words, the idea that you're creating a framework, a jurisdiction, I don't believe that's what he was objecting to. I think what he was objecting to was the belief that you can plan and direct economic interactions. I think that was really his concern. To those people who say that the objective is there should simply be no government, I say, I invite you to go visit places in Somalia. There are places in the world where there is no government. They're kind of hard to get there, and very few people want to go there. What's interesting about the Leap City model is it's essentially a very libertarian idea, which paradoxically is entirely built around the clarity of how government adds value. How government adds value. All the value added in the Leap City model is what is being provided by good government. And we know this is actually true. You can be in a place where there's a border line, and on one side of the border line you're in one municipal district, and the other you're in a different. And the house in one district that's identical to the house across the street may sell for 50% more because there's better government there. You can look at the border that separates North Korea and South Korea, and you see from space the electricity, the light, the economic activity in South Korea. In the north, it's dead. The difference is government. It's not that there's an absence of government, it's that there's good government.
Thank you, Dr. Klugmann, for sharing these ideas with us. And thank you too.